Okay, before I start the intro for real, just something I need to clarify. Now, ever since I posted that Yu-Gi-Oh! What If, I've been thinking about whether I should post another one or just focus on a new Kamen Rider one. So I've come up with a compromise where one week it's Yu-Gi-Oh!, the other it's an MHA Kamen Rider, or basically a free zone. So yeah, this is so anyone who was here before that video and who enjoyed my Kamen Rider content can still enjoy it, while the ones who enjoyed the Yu-Gi-Oh one can still get it. Will this work? I don't know, but I do want to emphasize that I am gonna be busy with exams for a few weeks after this, so if I don't end up uploading, that's why. And then there's me going away in the summer, which I don't really have much of a choice over, but yeah. Anyways, hey everyone, Fam here from Phantom Reaper, and I just want to say thank you all for the support on the last video. Really means a lot. I didn't expect it to be that well received, but yeah. I guess changing the title card kind of helped with that, but I'm not sure. I did spend around 2 to 3 hours after I got back from the Mario Galaxy movie drawing that while listening to the song Same Old Story from Cassette Beasts. But anyways, welcome to the 600 subscriber special, which frankly should have been what the Yu-Gi-Oh! What If was, but I digress. I didn't expect to reach 600 by the time I uploaded that. Anyways, welcome to What If Deku Was Kamen Rider Less, the prologue. Now, if anyone is familiar with Kamen Rider Less, you probably can guess what this is about, but if not, let me explain. Kamen Rider Less is a custom Kamen Rider I made, and he first appeared in the 500 subscriber special. It was an okay video in my opinion, but frankly there were a lot of questions that people wanted some answers to, such as what happened to the teachers or other stuff like that. So this video will be a prologue of sorts, which helps better explain it. And more so, show more things, yada 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 yada. I'm keeping that in. Now, frankly, it's been a while since I last did that video, so if I get some facts wrong, I do apologize. But there is some things to remember. Les uses a gun to henshin, much like how Night Rogue and Bloodstock do. His design takes inspiration from them, and he can erase quirks. Yeah, as long as he manages to shoot you with it. And I am going to be trying some sort of unique way of narrating. More like, how do I explain it? Let's just say less is narrating, which is actually Izuku. I actually have a question. Would you guys mind if I used Izuku instead of Deku, or Deku for Izuku? You know what I mean. Because I never refer to him that name, only in the titles. But anyway, I digress. Anyways, we've spent quite some time, so let's begin. Many people want an answer to this question, and they don't get it because they don't want to run across me, per se. What made me become this? Some say just another madman following the ideals of staying wrong. Others say tragedy, partially true. Some say wanting heroes to face the consequences of their actions. I guess you could say so. But in reality, I just grown tired of all of this. Of these flashing lights. This illusion created. It's just so tiring. I had a relatively normal life until the diagnosis. And things changed. I'm surprised I didn't fall sooner, but I can understand why. Even if the world seemed against me, I had the support of a loving mother. And of a father. Well, at least I did. Around the age of 9, he unfortunately passed away. Apparently, he was suffering from lung cancer. His own quirk did that to him. He could breathe fire, but that had dastardly consequences on his internal organs. Mom just would tell me that he was busy working. I knew the truth. I didn't want her to know I did. She was already struggling enough dealing with a useless child. Or so the public would say. Bless her soul that she put up with all this suffering. You see, in a world full of powers, a world where flash is everything, if you just so happen to be born without one, and also be born into a country that idolizes them, you're not gonna live an easy life. Far from it. Some of the stuff you may go through is probably what villains have to go through. Specifically those with a tragic origin, where they just snapped. It's surprising how cruel children can be, especially if they have the powers of explosions. That damn mutt. Just because I was born without some weird mutation, I'm suddenly treated less subhuman. And in reality, I've demonstrated how easy it is to kill the supposed strongest. Granted, luck played a part in my success, but I'm not gonna degrade her by calling her an item. Oh, forgive me. Where was I? Oh, yes. Children can be so cruel. And the worst part is, the adults enable this. I had a acquaintance, let's say, who went by the name Katsuki Bakugo, or more better known by his horrible hero name, King Explosion Murder God Dynamite. Honestly, what made him think that was a good name? Guess I wouldn't be surprised because of how much he enjoyed beating people up. A simple brute at the end of the day. Elevated because flashy, heroics, pointless buzzwords if you ask me. And it didn't help that I happened to go to one of the worst schools, at least for people with weak or no quirks at all. Alderaan High. They had this thing where they would basically let those with strong, heroic, or flashy quirks do whatever they want, while the others had to fend for themselves. And considering how rare a quirkless kid like me was, I was the perfect stress relief toy for that damn mutt, to ensure his perfect record would be intact. I honestly did enjoy hunting those animals down. And to my surprise, their strategy always failed. They kept entering a gamble that they never won. They thought that maybe because they let them get away with so many things, those who enter the hero course would help Alderaan High, but they never did. Ironic that they blindly just kept gambling and gambling. Of course, they all underestimated me. I was meek, weak. I wasn't strong, heroic, or flashy in their blinded eyes. If anything, I was good for one thing, and that was keeping Bakugo from attacking others. But they didn't understand one thing about me. I had something all of them lacked: an analytic mind. Granted, I was still obsessed with heroes back then. A naive child I was. Of course, May just saw these as stalker notes. Even those with weak, unimpressive quirks. Honestly, it was their loss. I found many ways for them to apply their quirks in ways they probably couldn't have dreamed of in their simple minds. And then there was that day. It wasn't what caused me to snap, no. Or get tired, as I said earlier, no. It was what started it all. I remember that day vividly. Our teacher came in with papers about what we want to do for our future. Of course, he threw them away, yelling he knew everyone wanted to be heroes. And I don't see how some of them could have became heroes. With their attitudes, I mean. But I'm not here to preach about them. In all honesty, I just see heroes as a police force. A ridiculous one at that. Of course, Bakugo, Eva's overachiever, obsessed with his supposed origin story. One of the reasons why he attended Oleron High in the first place. To make it seem like he came from a humble background. What humble background? Rich parents, great quirk, no struggle whatsoever. No, he wouldn't have had a humble underdog story. Just another statistic. Kept ever so popular because some reason they like him. Animals, I say. Of course, young me, still the delusional child I was, also applied to UA. They do allow quirkless people in there, but part of me had a feeling I would have been told. Concerns over my quirk status is the reason why you weren't allowed in the hero course. As if I'm any less fragile than those students you so happily drew into the front lines. Of course, Bakugo, the egotistical maniac that he was, didn't take kindly to that. He, in response, launched an explosion on my desk. And honestly, I'm surprised myself I managed to survive so long against him. With all the explosions he used on me. I'm surprised no one had died yet, because of how trigger happy that mutt was. He would then yell at me about applying at UA, saying a quirkless Deku like me. Pardon me for a second. As I was saying, he said someone like me didn't have the right to apply at UA. And he had this whole thing of me looking down on him. Looking down on you. Well, at this point in time, yes, I am. But back then I was just another of your lapdogs. That naive version of me, I wish. If there was a way to travel back in time, I would use it to inflict every known suffering technique possible. And at the end of that school day, he came back for round two. and blew up one of my notebooks, and then said this to me: "Take a swan dive off the roof and pray you get a quirk in the next life." Breathe in. Who tells someone that? Worst part is, what followed was just laughter. No one cared. No one ever did. All they saw was a weak human. Yet here's the thing about humans. There's a reason why we became the apex predators. Ever since quirks were introduced into life itself, stagnation followed. So obsessed with pursuing that life always showed in the comic books. If we never did, we could have been in space by now. We could have been touching stars, dancing on the surface of Mars, skating on the rings of Saturn, while braving the storms of Jupiter. We could have found a cure for cancer. Could have invented more clean energy. New systems to run at maximum capacity. But we never did. Because of quirks. And despite all the praise someone like Bakugo got, a human with a stick of dynamite could do just what he did. Granted, they would have a finite source of dynamite. But still, they completed the end objective: make an explosion. I'm getting off topic. Either way, after that, I went to get back my notebook from the koi pond that it so happened to land in. And then I proceeded to make my way home, and I went underneath the underpass. That led me to have an encounter with a sludge villain. I nearly died during that encounter. However, I was saved by a hero. And guess who it just so happened to be? That's right, the number one hero, All Might. I was unconscious for a bit afterwards, so imagine my surprise when fanboy me saw his idol right in front of him. I was a stuttering mess, and when I went to ask for his autograph, he already signed it. And then he proceeded to ramble on about something heroic or that, but I forgot. It did seem like he was in a hurry to leave. Made sense after what I discovered later on. But the fact that he just left a child there, who had already just suffocated, and didn't bother calling an ambulance or something, was quite reckless of him. Now, it wasn't probably of malice, but an honest mistake. Of course, as he was about to leave, I grabbed his leg, because I wanted to hear an answer from him. An answer that I haven't been given by anyone. Can a quirkless person be a hero? Of course, I only got to answer that after we landed on the roof. He did proceed to give me a small lecture afterwards about doing something reckless like that. And when he gave me the time of day to ask my question, I just rambled on a bit. And that's how I discovered that All Might was lose in his time. While everyone else discovered this at the Battle of Camino, I knew about this months before. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't try to expose it following what happened, but still that naive fanboy, that naive goody two-shoes remained. Even after you told me that a quirkless person can't be a hero. Well, he said it like this. You can't be a hero, not without a quirk. He then proceeded to go on saying I could be a police officer or a doctor, not realizing that those also need quirks. How ignorant was he? That golden throne he stood upon, that shining pillar that is the symbol of peace, made him blind to what was happening beneath him. Deep breaths, deep breaths, deep breaths. Apologies for that. And you know the worst thing about it? He left me there. A child whose dreams he just crushed. On the top of a random building. What, did he think I wouldn't have jumped? Well, he was right, but still. How would he explain that to the mother of that child? I'm sorry, but because of me being realistic, your child died. I went home right away that day. I just it felt so. Apologies, I don't wish to remember it, but I must. What followed afterwards was just strange, per se. I didn't attempt to enter UA. It seems like I had supposedly given up. I ended up selling all the merchandise I spent years gathering to have enough funds for myself and my mother. Of course, my mother wasn't oblivious to this sudden change, but I just shut her down. She knew something was wrong. I always had this belief that me and Bakugo were still friends. So I would often cover up whatever injuries I had as accidents. But something tells me she knew. But never pushed it because she was already going through so much. I didn't end up attending high school after graduating. I needed to get a job, help my mother. It was the least I could do. Of course, I made sure to take online classes whenever I had the free time. And I started work on this personal project of mine. It wasn't special, just a way for people to replicate the usage of a quirk. Never got really far as it should have, with how busy I was. One thing did become apparent though. I couldn't escape Bakugo. By that I mean it almost seemed like every day I was hearing something about him. He passed his entrance exams. He nearly killed one of his classmates. He was involved in an attack on UA, the USJ invasion, which was broadcasted everywhere. And there was some sort of praise for him. Granted, those were just slight rumors, possibly by that man, Kirishima. A hype man of sorts for that mutt. If only he knew. Then the sports festival, where he won again. Where's karma, I ask? But eventually it did deliver, though not in the way I wanted. Apparently during the summer training camp that UA has, Bakugo was kidnapped by the League of Villains for his apparent villainous attitude. Unfortunately, the young boy died that day. The leader of the Wild Wild Pussycats, nephew. I offer my condolences to Mandalay for what she had to go through. From what I heard, that young boy was basically told all his life about how heroic his parents' sacrifices were, and things along that line. That was a child who lost his mother and father, and that's what they think about. Talking about heroes, it always comes back to them eventually. After that death, the Pussycats slowly disbanded. It was temporary, however. More so a way for them to deal with their grief. I remember watching the news all about the Camino incident. Bakugo was captured by the League of Villains. And when people began to point out his less than heroic attitude, Eraserhead defended him, saying he was the most heroic and hard-working student. Really now, Eraserhead? That's what you consider heroic? A wild animal? I don't expect any less from the man who expels his entire class on the first day after not teaching them anything. And all with black marks. Still, I remember Bakugo's attitude during that. He was actively going against what a normal person would do. Leave and let the professionals handle it. He wanted revenge, and so he kept lashing out. And due to him, All Might struggled a lot. How ironic it was. He was actively destroying Hero Society. The same one he wanted to be a part of. Eventually, however, unfortunately, they managed to get him out of there. And I remember seeing what All for One could do. All those quirks. All that power. Yet wasted on a man as simple as him. But he has lived a long time. But we're not here to talk about whether if I could use it better or not. In fact, that was the old me talking. But I digress. Eventually, All Might's true form was revealed for all the public to see. Their symbol of peace, an invincible icon, was now just a fragile skeleton of a man. I'd be lying if I didn't find that moment quite amusing. You worked so hard to keep this secret, so hard to keep this peace, and yet it is now out in the public so everyone can see what you've become. Eventually, he did defeat All for One, but it was clear he had other plans. Whatever those plans were wouldn't have worked due to his supposed successor, Shigaraki. All for One placed some bets on him and lost. He didn't mature enough, per se, or become a much more effective villain. I did have an encounter with him, and the remains of the League of Villains, and they were quickly dealt with. As for Garaki, no one knows where he went, but I like to believe that he didn't make it far. But that day holds importance to me for a different reason. Because, as luck would have it, fate is a cruel mistress. My mother was in Kamino when it happened. She was one of the casualties during that incident. I only found out afterwards. A good person was taken away from me. She now joins my father up in the heavens. At least I hope so. Because if it turns out God sent her to hell, I will fight through heaven itself to ensure both my parents have the paradise they deserve. Forgive me for getting emotional. That's been happening way too much. Of course, the fact that I was now an orphan didn't do me favors. I had to deal with a lot of new things. Overwhelming, but after some time I was able to get a handle of things. And you wanna know what I find amusing? After all of these disasters, all of this, Yue still was a beacon of hope. It was clear that Bakugo was actively going against orders. It was clear that Yue was not capable of ensuring the safety of their students, especially with some of them who did not make it. But you know what? Even after that wasn't the day I eventually got tired. No! Despite the fact my own mother was killed, I still had that little voice in my head. That little brainwashing parasite obsessed with heroes. I sometimes wonder if others had that parasite in them as well. The days after that were... I'll be honest with you, it was horrendous. People weren't prepared for All Might to suddenly disappear. Some people even blame Bakugo for causing his retirement. But, as we know, he still became a hero at the end. So what did that really amount to? I did hear that the first years of UA were allowed to do their provisional license exam. A clear sign that the Hero Commission was desperate. And lo and behold, Bakugo didn't get his license. He had to repeat it. But then, eventually, that day would arrive. It was just one day, like many other, a sort of aimless wandering, if you will. Part of me wondered, why did I still continue? In the distance, I heard some noise. I chalked it up to being another hero and villain confrontation. What I didn't realize was that it was the raid on the Shihasaki's compound. You know, the raid on the Yakuza organization that first created the corporation bullets. There was a raid going on. It seemed like things were getting hectic, to say the least. But then, in my mindless wandering, something bumped into me. A child. A scared child. I don't know why, but I knew one thing. This child needed to be somewhere safe. And knowing that there was a hero and villain fight going on, the chances of it coming towards me with my luck was very likely. The child... No. I'm not just degrading her to that. Her name was Eri. She clung to me tightly. I managed to make it all the way back, while also having to deal with her constantly whispering, "Don't let him take me. I don't want to go back." A scared child. I do admit I did not know how to handle things. I guess I could say I saw a bit of myself in Eri. But her suffering was much more worse compared to mine. I always did believe that there was always someone who had it worse. It was difficult at first. She couldn't sleep. She would hesitate, even when offered food. It was difficult. And I wasn't able to get much information as to why she was like this at the time. So I took a slow approach. She would often hide somewhere that was safe. I would find her, but not expose the fact I knew where she was, to make her feel even more safe. After all, I was just a stranger, and I couldn't exactly leave her behind. Thankfully, though, the compensation I got from the life insurance my mother had, surprisingly, meant I could live a few months without working. Eventually, I was able to break through to her. One day I left her apple slices, and it seemed that she really enjoyed them. So, I got her more. Eventually, I was able to find out her name. And while, yes, it wasn't perfect, I was able to at least make her feel comfortable. The best approach I figured was to not be overbearing, but to at least show her I was there. One day I randomly left some cartoons on, and she came out to watch them. I could tell she enjoyed it, but she didn't smile. A clear sign she was still traumatized. I did eventually hear about the news about this raid on the Siyasaki. When Eri heard those words, she had a panic attack. And that's when I discovered her quirk. A rewind quirk. She ended up rewinding an apple I was eating. To a point where it wasn't eaten at all. I was able to calm her down. It was clear whatever happened to her in there had traumatized her beyond beliefs. I made a mental note to gain more info when she's asleep, as to not trigger another panic attack. After she calmed down, she began profusely apologizing and crying, saying her quirk was a curse. That she was a curse. I looked her dead in the eye that moment and told her, nobody is a curse because of their quirk. And no one should be forced to be a curse because of it. You're still a child. You may have made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you're a curse. That wasn't the best speech, I do admit, but it seemed to at least help a bit. After she went to sleep that day, I looked up all the information I could gather. From what I could gather, the leader of the Siyasaki, who went by the villain name Overhaul, was apparently using someone to harvest their organs. And with his quirk he can kill them and revive them over and over again. A sickening display. Apparently he had his arms cut off. His prisoner transport was hijacked by the remains of the League of Villains. Now that I think about it, I should have offered my thanks to Shigaraki before I disposed of him. And so my life continued with Eri. She was curious, I do admit that. One day she managed to stumble across my old work, the device that could replicate quirks. She asked me about it and I mentioned it was a project that didn't really take off. I did also mention I was quirkless, but Eri didn't seem to mind that. If anything, if I had a quirk like Overhaul's, it would have caused her to be in even more panic. And so life continued. I would discover more information about the Siyasaki raid. And that's when I would discover that... Sorry. Remembering him makes me furious. The work-study hero in third year of UA, the leader member of the Big Tree, the Million, had actually encountered Eri. I got this information from her herself when she saw a picture of him. I heard her whisper, "The man who gave her away." A horrifying revelation, but it seemed like Muriel was an exact copy of All Might, most likely groomed into that position by the hero, Sir Night-Eye. I never liked him. I remember one moment when Eri would ask me what I was doing, with my face. I was smiling at that moment, remembering the good memories I had with my mother. I then made it my mission to make Eri smile, make her happy. It took a long time, and I couldn't exactly leave the house, because I had a feeling the moment we were out there, they would have taken Eri away. But we made do. One day, however, Eri had an accident where she bumped her head and broke her horn. I remember panicking, and Eri was also crying. However, that's when we noticed that it seemed like rewind was accumulated in her horn. I made sure to keep it in a safe place to ensure that it wouldn't cause any future problems. Eventually, her horn did grow back real quick. And one day I figured, why not tackle my old project again? Eri kind of wanted to see it. So I worked on it. And one day, while trying to figure out a solution to my problem, Eri came in with a drawing of a weird armored man. I thought she might have had a nightmare, but she thought it could be my costume. That's what inspired my armor. A pure soul. But happiness does not last forever. A week before it, Eri had a collapse. She was growing weaker. I figured it was just a sickness. She had reassured me it was, but I felt like it was something else entirely. Is that how my mother felt with me? I asked myself. Every day, she would grow weaker and weaker, but she would still try to keep a smile, still try to reassure me things were okay. But eventually, forgive me, this moment makes me emotional. She was struggling to breathe. I asked her if there was anything I could do to help her. I had half the mind to take her to a hospital, but I knew that could probably make it worse. A panic attack in her state would have. I was having hundreds, if not thousands, of thoughts in my head. But she held my hand and looked me in the eye with her tired, exhausted eyes. I still remember the words she told me. Thank you for letting me be happy. Not thank you for making me happy, mind you. Thank you for letting her be happy. She She was denied it all her life and I let her experience it. Her life was that bad that she felt the need to say to me that. The fact it was I who let her experience it. She was just a child. She was just a child. And they threw her away. They used her. She didn't deserve this. She didn't deserve any of this. If Lemillion had not given her away to Overhaul when they encountered, if those heroes had done a better job in ensuring she was rescued, if quirks themselves didn't cause people to do horrendous actions like this, if the world didn't allow for stuff like this, why? I ask myself, why must we live in a world where not even our children, our younger siblings, our family, are safe from the villainous grasps of corruption and human malice? No. It wasn't human malice. It was hunger. It was hunger for power. Hunger for entertainment. Hunger for enjoyment, appeasement, entertainment, living a fantasy. We traded away our morals for a dream. We traded away progress for an illusion. We traded away the lives of innocents for a system like this. And at the center of it all, one thing. Quirks. A disease. A parasite. One that ruins others' lives while unfairly improves others. One that defies your status. One that defies if you even get treated equally. That was the day I finally got tired. After that, I made sure she was buried. She deserved a proper resting place. There was this beautiful cliffside that I used to go to. It was tranquil, and when the sun sets, it's a wonderful sight. Of course, preparing something like this was extremely difficult without the proper support. But I managed. Soon I began to grieve. I mourned her loss. It's funny, really. Even when my own mother passed away, I didn't feel like this. Don't get me wrong, I still felt grief for her passing. But this was different. I guess I understand the saying, no parent wishes to see their child go. At least I thought I was a parent. But what follows grief is anger. Anger at those who had caused this. Anger at those who had failed this. So I began working on my project. Project Less. I decided that the belt's armor idea wasn't going to work properly. Instead, I modified it in a way. So now it became a firearm. The same firearm that has ended so many heroes' careers. I still had her horn now. And unlike Overhaul, I managed to find a way to do many things with just a fragment of her. It felt insulting, but they needed to face the punishment. I needed to get rid of it. I needed to remove quirks entirely. I could never make it so it could summon the armor, no. It just doesn't do that. In reality, it reverts me back to a state I was wearing it, achieving the same results. Getting it to erase a quirk was difficult. It took many attempts. I did test runs on whatever tugs I could find in the nearby alley. Of course, this led to some results, one of which resulted in a few rewinding out of existence. Some would only temporarily lose it. Much like the early versions of the quick erasing bullets. I realized I needed to get my hands on the sample. It disgusted me, but I've given up my morals a long time ago. Designing the armor was less of a challenge. There are many things you can find in a scrapyard. Granted, it wasn't made to be extremely durable. At least the first version. Just enough that it can protect me. But it worked. And you know the strange thing to me, at least? No one seemed to notice these tests that occur. They grown complacent after their series of victories. Now, how many of you remember the Paramount War? Oh, calling it a war was, well, not accurate. As we know, the League of Villains had somehow managed to... What's the word I'm looking for? Ah, yes. Do a hostile takeover of the Meta Liberation Front. An organization that wishes for freedom of quirks. A revolutionary organization. Another quirk-obsessed one. The Hero Commission had gotten info about this, due to the fact they had a spy on the inside. And honestly, out of all the heroes, why Hawks? He's recognizable. He's high ranked. It'd be better to pick someone of a much lower rank. But I am not here to correct them. After all, I've been giving them much more trouble than they can handle. One priority they had was to capture Shigaraki, because it seems as if there were rumors that he was gonna get the quirk all for one. Those turned out to be semi-true. He was going to get it, but there was a change of plans. Soon the day of the Paramount War came along, and I figured this'd probably be a good time for me to do a new test run of sorts on what seemed like the final version of my quirk erasing formula. Granted, it wasn't easy sneaking into a battlefield, but I managed. I made sure to pick up some abandoned support equipment so I can use it for my armor and other gear. I would need to establish a base of operations. That wasn't my bedroom, of course. And after a bit of wandering and scavenging, I come across the site. The R-rated hero Meta Knights finding a bunch of random mooks. Of course you could easily beat them. So I figured, why not? Why not see if it works? And so, I aimed my weapon. And just as I was about to rip a piece of her clothing to use her quirk, I fired. It connected. She didn't have much time to contemplate why her quirk wasn't working, as she had to fight against a bunch of random mooks. She was a good fighter, and that sort of inspired me to make sure I could fight in the event I lost my firearm. Without it, I'm just a man in armor. But eventually, though she got overwhelmed, it seemed to be a permanent version. Of course, I couldn't tell if it was going to be permanent. So I fired yet again on the villains who were so happily celebrating their victory against a famous and great hero. The confusion on their face when they realized their quirks weren't working or weren't there at all is one I will remember. I made sure to dispose of them before they could get out. Or run, in this case. I didn't want news of this spreading so early. Eventually, the heroes did win this war. Shigaraki and the remainder of the League escaped. The Meta Liberation Army was arrested. The heroes celebrated another victory, and there were some people singing the praises of Bakugo, saying he was such a great hero, it disgusted me. It seemed like they sort of brushed Midnight's death under the rug. Though it was clear something happened. Presentation Michael wasn't as enthusiastic as he normally would be. And some of the students of Class 1A seem to be missing something. Ah, yes, that energy that they had all those years ago when they first started. Seems like some of them couldn't handle the war. I don't blame them. They shouldn't have been forced to fight in the first place. Of course, people like Bakugo are still. I don't need to explain anymore now, do I? And what followed was some time of peace. I was working on my new base of operations and perfecting my formula. Of course, the one I often showed others was a decoy. It was Ares' horn that was the real reason as to why I was able to do these things. Combining it with the formula just meant I had much more access to it. One day, however, as I was doing some research on potential new targets, I didn't want to start too early before I was prepared. I came across some interesting footage of some older heroes. I would have ignored it, but I noticed a pattern. An unexpected mutation in their quirk. Along with their quirk evolving, they seemed to gain a sort of new strength to it. At first I was confused, and then I came up with an interesting theory. If there's a quirk that can give or take, is there a quirk that can be passed on? And what if these people were connected by that? And during my research, I came across a picture of Nana Shimura with what seemed to be a young All Might. Strange, I thought to myself. But then I realized, what really is All Might's quirk? It was easy doing some digging, and then I came across something interesting. Old documents. Documents to show you are registered, that you are a citizen of Japan. And in bold red, quirkless. I cannot begin to describe you the rage I felt when I read that. It was akin to finding out a father you looked up to was the scum of the earth. I continued on further, looking at recent ones, and saw I was registered as superpower. Clever name! I yelled in my head that moment I saw it. This just confirmed my theory of it being a passable quirk. I don't know how he met Nanashima. Probably was like me when I was younger. Keyword probably. But if that's the case, if he knew the position I was in, why did he continue to reject me? At this point I didn't care. I didn't care about heroes. I didn't care about it. I cared about my goal, erasing quirks and getting revenge. And then, as many of you are aware, all for one had broken out of Tartarus and went on another rampage. Seemed like he had a surplus of nomus in hiding. While it wasn't anything akin to what the Paranormal Liberation Army could have been when they won, it still caused havoc. I had decided to sit out for a bit, just to see how it would go. I did come across some interesting facts during my research. It seemed like Lemillion had also gotten an unexpected quirk mutation. So we found out who was the new successor, or rather replacement for All Might. And while he would have eventually had to fight All for One, All Might decided to try and do one last hurrah. Use whatever ounce of strength he had along with a suit of armor made specifically for him. Look at that! A quirkless person can be a hero. The fight between those two was destructive. It seemed like All for One was at his life's end, if you will, and wanted to get in one last hurrah, one last chance, a revenge, because he was petty. Unfortunately, he didn't account for my intervention, because I wanted to make a statement. It wasn't easy tracking them down to where they were fighting, but I was able to. And when I could confirm that I had a good shot, I fired. Now, to outsiders, it seemed like All for One had just given up. But to those close, they realized that something happened to him. And lo and behold, All for One had fallen. I made sure to leave before I was seen. And what followed was another celebration, all that stuff. Yada yada yada. And then I got the news that Lemillion became the new number one hero. More praise, more flash, more all of this. I was getting tired of it. So I believed it was time I sent a message that would eventually be known as the sudden death case. Heroes left, right, and center, dying, and no evidence as to why. I do admit it was random on who I picked. And as for the reason I left Recoil alive, I wanted them to know. As I believed it was that time. No, I believed it was time that moment that I make myself known. And no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't. They weren't able to take me. I didn't idle by after my successful test. No, I made sure to improve after every encounter. I added things to make sure that quirks that focused around sticking you into place where it has effect. I increased my armor to be able to take more punishment. I made it more sleeker to be more flexible. Eventually, I began to target the heroes associated with the Shiisaki raid. I'm not going to go into details. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And before I would get to the final person, I decided to pay a visit to someone familiar. All Might. I managed to get into All Might Tower quite easily. He sat there in his office. The years haven't been kind to him. Good. I could narrate it, but I think it's better if I let you all hear a recording.
Who's there? Calm down, Toshi. You're just going crazy.
I can assure you you're not. Former #1 hero.
You.
Did you honestly think I'd give you the chance to retaliate? You're predictable, All Might. Or should I say Toshinari Yagi? The other wielder of that passable quirk.
How? How do you know about One for All?
So that's its name. That means there's a connection between it and All for One. But that doesn't seem to matter. Now, where were we? Ah, yes. The hypocritical traitor.
If I'm a traitor, you're nothing more than another villain. We will stop you, Less.
Who's gonna stop me then? Certainly not you after I'm done. Not Endeavor. Not King Explosion Murder God Dynamite. He's gone already. And certainly not your successor, Lemillion.
Muriel? How do you...
Anything is possible when you have a brain like mine. Actually, that's an understatement. Anything is possible if you just think. Something you all forgot. Something you forgot. Traitor.
What makes me a traitor, then? You keep saying that.
Let's see. I know for a fact you got that quirk from your master, and that you were also quirkless. But I think it's better if you hear it straight from the source. Maybe you'll understand why I keep using that word. Tell me, answer this question, and answer it honestly.
Can a quirkless person be a hero? That voice... You're that...
Don't try and make excuses, All Might. Clearly you weren't aware of life for people like us. People like you used to be. Police officer, doctor. Unfortunately, quirks are required. Vet, quirk is required. Teacher,
A quirk is required. Construction. A quirk is required. You stood atop your golden throne, your pillar that you worked so hard to maintain. And this is the result of it. And once I'm done with you, I'll finish what I started. Well, not necessarily ridden the world of quirks, but eradicating the Shihisaki culprits. And I just need to finish the last one. Lemillion. You can try, but I have my faith in young Muriel that he will defeat your fate, or the fate that Sir Night placed in you when he groomed the perfect successor for you. Oh, and don't try fighting. That blade I used was laced with a neurotoxin. One of the reasons why I'm so confident to monologue. Now, instead of dying in a blaze of glory, you'll die slowly and painfully. And with your death and Muriel's, maybe the world will move forward. I don't know. Humans are so unpredictable. Or used to be. I miss that unpredictability. It's what made us be able to harness the power of the sun before quirks. Look at that. You're dying. And with that, the symbol of peace is no more. Looks like it's nearly time for my encounter with you, Lemillion. Now, I'd best be on my way.
And that was his final moments. Not a less stand, but quivering. And as we all know, eventually Lemillion fell as well. And with that, I was done. Done with the Shihisaki culprits, at least. Overhaul and his goons were taken care of. I made sure to take my time with him personally. And I didn't, well, if you're assuming I tortured him, I did so in a different way. I simply threw him into a trash compactor, surrounded by the filth he so hated. Wasn't merciful. Oh no, he's still in there. He should be dead in a week. And they haven't even discovered him. He's gone insane. And with all the sharp debris in there, he is not in a good state. And would you look at the time? I went on quite a bit. I wanted to summarize, but I took so much time. And to the person who finds this recording, it's not gonna help you with finding and detaining me. I've discovered a new project. And let's just say
This world isn't the only one that's gonna face my judgment.
And with that, that concludes this 600 subscriber special. Now, to anyone who was disappointed by the fact I didn't draw custom images for this one, I do apologize, it's just I don't necessarily have the time to. And oh my god, I was recording this. Well, it was an experience, I'll just give it that. It was honestly unique, I'll say, doing it like this. Instead of just having me narrate, like going, but Midoriya was bullied and his mother died and he was all yada yada yada. I think it was much more interesting having Less himself narrate it. And with that said, like I said earlier, and in the community post I uploaded this morning at the time of recording, don't expect a new What If for a few weeks, because I have exams coming up. Anyways, you all have a lovely day now. See ya, and I hope you enjoyed this. One more thing. Also, this is post-editing in Phantom here. My god, was editing this a pain. I started around 4, and it's now 8 p.m. Actually, no, wait, there's been editors who've been able to edit videos, and... No, wait, no. Was it true? No, okay, I'm getting off topic. Yeah, I edited this all in one day. I could have got it done sooner, but I had to move a lot of images and stuff, and had to go through the entire recording. So yeah, just wanted to express that. You all have a lovely day.